Welcome to another episode of the Golden Moment podcast. My name's Mijo Biscan. This episode is all about how I learned to prioritize my music. So in the last episode, we talked about focusing on the long game for deeper fulfillment rather than the short-term pleasures. It's easier said than done. And in this episode, I'll share with you how I rescued my songwriting and singing practice from the dumpster of distraction and put it in front and center into what I was doing. So my favorite quote that reminds me of what's important in my life when it comes to music and sharing that with others is, "Things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least." This is a Goethe quote that I love, and it says so much about prioritizing. It's very simple. Things which matter most, things that you really care about and are really important, that should never be at the mercy of things which matter least. You know, these other things that don't matter as much, they're trivial, you're not going to care about them, in 3 days' time, let alone 5 years' time. Those things should never, get on top of the things that are most important. So I noticed that I was thinking a lot about music and a lot about my career, and I would just think and I would hope that it was just going to move forward and I would find time to do it, and I was always frustrated because I didn't have enough dedicated time for it to happen. And life would always get in the way, and I'd have intentions to practice and write a song, but then the dishes would need my attention, and a friend would call for a catch-up. And I'd need to finish off that 4-hour Joe Rogan podcast on alien spacecraft and if they're real or not. And, I had to do all of that stuff to clear the slate so I would have these perfect conditions to do my creative work. And when the conditions were right, then I would, I'd high-five the muse and we'd sit down and write a song. But it just so happens that by the time I'd get around to it, it was time for bed and the day was gone. Another day was wasted, another missed opportunity to do the thing I loved. And I had the entire day and I still didn't do it. And so there are actually lots of reasons for this that underpin, this happening. But one big one was that I wasn't making it a priority and I was letting everything else get in the way. My songwriting was at the mercy of all this other stuff happening. So there's a great saying which is, things that are urgent and seem to be emergencies, they get our attention. But things get our attention even when they're not emergencies. Our mind plays this trick on us. So there's a lot of fake emergencies that we create and we elevate to do or die actions. Like we have to resolve them right now. We sort of can't hold any of the tension about that thing staying unresolved for a little bit longer. And leaving those things undone for another day would actually have no impact on our lives whatsoever. So some of these things are like emails, messenger pings, text messages, calls for meetings and hangouts, requests for documents, via email, someone's asking you to send something back to them, or even your real estate saying, hey, we need this thing, from you. These can all seem in the moment like we need to be on top of all of that stuff at all times. But in reality, we don't. And this is kind of what I realized. And the moment this really, was made very evident to me, it's almost like I didn't have to make this realization, it was thrust upon me, was when I did stay in this isolated cabin in Iceland doing my songwriting. If I wanted to check my email or call anyone, I had to travel 40 kilometers and I'd normally have to hitch a ride to get to the nearest place where I could get an internet connection. So I would check either once a fortnight or once a week. And compared to how often most people check these things now, at the moment, it's said that people pick up their phone on average 120 times a day, that seems crazy to me. I suppose that's about 8 to 10 times an hour roughly. And so I was checking 1 time a week. So I expected when I went to check it, throughout the week, I would be thinking, oh man, I'm going to be in so much trouble. All these people are going to be waiting on me to reply to them, and maybe there's a bill I haven't paid, and etc., etc. And I really had to try and keep it out of my mind and just focus on the songwriting. And then I expected to be swamped with requests, things that urgently needed my attention, angry follow-up emails from people about things that I hadn't done yet. And it turned out that on the first week, there were 3 emails that I absolutely had to respond to. 3, like, if I didn't respond to them for another week, things would go bad. In the second week, it was probably 2 emails. In the third week, it kind of dropped back down to 1 email. In the last week, it was kind of like replies were optional. So what this helped me to realize was that replies on 95% of things that I thought were important and urgent were neither. They weren't important and they weren't urgent. So I wanted to share with you a couple of practical things that I do to help me stay in this way of very clearly defining things for me that are important and things that are essentially distractions. So my first rule that I have is things that are important to me, that align with my goals and my vision for my future life, though they may not be urgent, must get my attention every day before anything else. So this is where I prioritize my singing and songwriting practice, where I block out time for it. And in that time, essentially nothing else can matter. Nothing else does matter. The only thing that would sort of stop me in that process is if the room was literally on fire, or if there was someone ran into the room and they just had blood all over them and they had, they were just screaming their head off. That's like a legitimate emergency that I probably need to act on. But otherwise, I block it out and it doesn't get my attention for at least that period of time. So that's the first one. Things that are very important to me, align with my goals and vision for my life, though they may not be urgent, must get my attention before anything else. That's rule 1. Rule 2. This is a fun one. So I'm going to tell you very quickly my list, my top 10 priorities. So this is my top 10 priority list until further notice. So number 1, singing and songwriting. Number 2, singing and songwriting. Number 3, singing and songwriting. Number 4, singing and songwriting. Number 5, singing and songwriting. Number 6, singing and songwriting. Number 7, singing and songwriting. Number 8, singing and songwriting. Number 9, singing and songwriting. Number 10, singing and songwriting. Number 11 through to 100 is everything else. So the reason that I do this, as you can see, if I'm looking at a priority list, if I just had it as 1 and then there was a 2 like just right in next to it, just up behind it, just waiting, to get my attention, then it can be very easy to get the priorities confused. So I make it very clear to myself and my own mind that the highest priority, number 1 through to 10, is my music practice, my singing, writing songs. And then everything else can get handled when it's time. Rule number 3, if it doesn't look, smell, sound, feel, taste like it is directly related to my priority list above, I give it 0 attention, I give it 0 time, I give it 0 energy. So I look away from that thing, that distraction, even if it's an opportunity, I look away from it as soon as possible. And I know that thing is not for me. It's not for me right now, and it may never be for me. So If it doesn't look, smell, sound, feel, taste like it's directly related to singing, songwriting, then it's for another time. It's not getting any of my attention. I won't even really think about it. I won't consider it. It kind of becomes an automatic no. So I start with no, and then I have to move myself to yes, where most of the time, our default thing is to say yes to things and then figure out, oh, no, I can't do that. So I start with no, and then I move to a yes. So there are my 3 rules. So I know, if you're listening to this, you might be thinking, these examples might sound pretty extreme. And these examples, they really, what they do is they help me really clearly see the difference between what's going to be good for me long term and what's a distraction. So I can't control every minute of my day to be in alignment with these guidelines. But when I'm adhering to them closely, that's when I'm in the flow. I'm avoiding the busy work of life and distraction, and I'm making progress on my life's work. So writing songs, feeling inspired, singing at my best. And when I'm doing that, that's when I feel, my most happiest. And that's actually when I feel like I'm a better contributor to all the other things that I do, because it's not the only thing I do from, morning till I go to sleep. Hence this podcast, I'm doing some other things as well that I bring my attention to. But I know that when I'm keep those things very clear, I know what my mission is, I know where to spend my time, and when I'm doing it, I feel really connected to my life. And that makes me a better person in all the other areas of my life. So I have another little reminder here that I use, and it's a Stephen Covey quote, which reads, "The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing." And it's, again, sort of just reinforces to me this idea that it's really important to prioritize the thing I love that serves me in the long term. So what do you do if you don't know your main thing? What do you do then? It's likely I wasted a lot of my time when I didn't clearly know what my main thing was. So in the next episode, I'm going to share the way that I clarified the main thing as it stands for me now, and how you might go about doing that if that's something you want to do, and why being in touch with your creative vision makes life more fulfilling. So I hope you liked this episode. If you did, please leave a comment below, share the episode, give it a thumbs up, rate it on iView, Stitcher, do all those things. Really appreciate it. Share it on social media, share it with a friend who could benefit from hearing this. And if you'd like to get a free download of 5 of my songs, you can go to mijobiscan.com/free music to listen to that music and get a free download. To get a limited edition, personalized and signed CD of my latest album, Golden Moment, which comes with an instant digital download of the album, as well as artwork and lyrics, you can go to mijobiscan.com/GMCD. Thanks for listening. Stay golden. See you in the next episode. Bye for now.